A chronicle of some events of the Battle of Stalingrad, first half of January 1943. On January 1, 1943, the headquarters of the Supreme High Command of the Soviet Union incorporated the 62nd, 64th, and 57th Armies of the Stalingrad Front into the Don Front. The headquarters renamed the Stalingrad Front the Southern Front. The front's troops received the strategic mission of advancing on Rostov. In Stalingrad, a battle was underway to destroy the enemy units that had broken through to the Volga. Units of the 95th Rifle Division Commander, Colonel Vasily Akimovich Gerishny, joined forces with units of the 138th Rifle Division Commander, Ivan Ilyich Lyadnikov. The 2nd Guards Mortar Division arrived at Archeta Station. The division was operationally subordinate to the 65th Army. By January 9, 1943, the division's units had taken up battle formations in the area of the Vertyakenskaya, Parfenova, and Rubeznaya ravines. German troops occupied the line from Marinovka to the central part of Stalingrad, 53 kilometers from north to south, 35 kilometers wide. The territory is 1,400 square kilometers. The enemy is surrounded by 7 Soviet armies. Terrain battles are underway on the Stalingrad front, involving troops from the 5th Tank Army of the Southwestern Front and the 5th Shock Army of the Southern Front. Successfully developing the offensive, the troops pushed the enemy back from the Simla River line. The 3rd Guards Heavy Mortar Division, commanded by Major General of Artillery Solovyov, arrived at Archeta Station. The division was operationally subordinate to the 65th Army. Upon arrival, it completed a 130-kilometer march. During the advance of the 65th Army, units of the division supported the advancing troops, firing at fortified areas in the areas of Baruchia, Pereyaznaya, and Zarubnaya ravines. The headquarters of the partisan movement on the Stalingrad front dispatched a partisan detachment of 60 fighters under the command of Yershov. The partisans began combat operations the very next day. The Supreme Command headquarters of the Soviet Union approved the plan for Operation Ring to eliminate the encircled Nazi group near Stalingrad. The objectives of the operation were to eliminate the Marinovsky salient, to tighten the encirclement, to split the enemy group into 2 parts, to destroy the enemy. The main attack was carried out by the 65th Army. Nazi aviation delivered less than 100 tons of various supplies per day to Paulus's encircled troops, while the daily requirement was approximately 1,000 tons. Soviet troops reached the Marinovka, Tonkaya Gully, and Prudboy Junction line. In this encirclement, Nazi units are holding the defense with the last of their strength. Radio United States of America reports, "The most gratifying news we heard on the threshold of the new year 1943 was the Information Bureau's report on the results of the 6-week offensive of Soviet troops near Stalingrad. Hitler made a grave miscalculation when he attacked the Soviet Union. By decree of the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the Soviet Union, new insignia, epaulets, have been introduced for Red Army personnel. Troops of the Southern Front are successfully advancing in the general direction of Rostov. Troops of the Southwestern Front continue fighting to destroy enemy forces in the Chertkovo and Streltsovka areas. They have reached the Sukaya and Bolshaya Medvezhya rivers." From the operational summary of the Wehrmacht Command Headquarters, food supplies in Stalingrad have deteriorated, the condition of the troops is grave, the situation with fuel and ammunition is critical. On January 7, the Soviet command developed a plan to deliver an ultimatum to the Nazi troops demanding surrender. That evening, the company radio repeatedly transmitted messages to Paulus's headquarters about the dispatch of envoys. Units of the 11th Artillery Division, commanded by Colonel Popovich, had unloaded at the Ilovlya and Kachelinskaya stations. The division proceeded under its own power to the Vertyachi region, where it took up combat positions on January 9, joining the 65th Army. The State Defense Committee issued a resolution on the construction of the Panchino-Kalach-on-Don railway line of the Southeastern Railway. On January 8, the Soviet command presented an ultimatum to the German fascist troops encircled near Stalingrad, proposing that they cease their senseless resistance and capitulate to avoid needless bloodshed. The ultimatum, signed by the representative of the Supreme Command Headquarters Nikolai Voronov and the commander of the Don Front Konstantin Rokozovsky, was transmitted by radio to Paulus's headquarters and delivered to the battle formations of the Nazi troops by our parliamentarians, Major Alexander S. Myslov, an employee of the Intelligence Department of the Don Front headquarters, and Captain Nikolai Dyatlenko, an interpreter. From the Don Front Command's ultimatum to the German Sixth Army and all encircled German troops. You, as commander of the encircled troops, and your headquarters are requested to cease resistance. Transfer all personnel, weapons, combat equipment, and military property to our disposal. Response expected at 6 a.m. Moscow time, January 9, 1943. Hitler's headquarters issued an order to continue resistance until the arrival of relief forces, Wehrmacht troops, scheduled to deploy in the second half of February 1943. Colonel General Paulus rejected the Soviet command's offer of surrender in writing. The Military Council of the Don Front issued a call to the troops, to a victorious, decisive battle, dear comrades, based on a resolution of the State Defense Committee. The first secretary of the Stalingrad Regional Committee of the All-Union Communist Party of Bolsheviks, chairman of the City Defense Committee, Alexei Semyonovich Chuyanov, was appointed a member of the Military Council of the Don Front. On January 10, 1943, troops of the Don Front launched Operation Ring, an offensive aimed at eliminating the encircled Nazi group near Stalingrad. Artillery preparation began at 8:05 a.m. Approximately 7,000 guns and mortars spent 55 minutes destroying and suppressing enemy defenses with heavy fire. The 16th Air Army also played an active role. At 9 a.m., infantry and tanks launched an attack. Troops of the 65th Army of Lieutenant General Pavel Ivanovich Batov and the 21st Army of Lieutenant General Ivan Mikhailovich Chistikov, delivering the main blow, overcame fierce enemy resistance and breached the enemy's defenses in the direction of the Marinovsky salient. The 64th and 57th Armies launched a counterattack in the direction of the Basargino-Novi Rogachik junction. From the area southwest of Erzovka, the 66th and 62nd Armies launched an offensive toward Gorodish. The Don Front's assets outnumbered the enemy only in artillery and aviation. By the end of the day, the 65th Army had penetrated the enemy's defenses to a depth of 1.5–4.5 kilometers in the direction of the main attack. Other army units advanced less rapidly, the Germans resisted stubbornly. On the night of January 11, German resistance was broken at Korovatka Gully in the southwestern bank of the Chervlenaya River. On January 12, 1943, troops of the 65th and 21st Armies reached the Rososhka River and the Karpovka area. Soviet troops successfully continued Operation Air Blockade. On January 13, units of the Don Front under the command of Konstantin Rokossovsky regrouped their forces. The main attack was shifted from the 65th Army's sector to the 21st Army's zone. In the direction of the main attack, our units reached the Rososhka River, in the Karpovka area, and further north to the line, State Farm No. 1, height 122.9. Soviet troops captured the settlements of Stary Rogachik, Dmitrievka, Sybenko, Rokotina, and State Farm No. 1, crossed the line along the Chervlenaya River and reached the railroad at Karpovskaya station. Units of the 64th and 57th Armies broke through the enemy's defenses and reached the line, the southern outskirts of Yelka, Hill 119.7, and the southern outskirts of Rokotino. The breakthrough in this sector of the front created a direct threat to the rear of the entire German group on the eastern bank of the Rososhka River. The 62nd Army's strike group cleared several neighborhoods of Stalingrad near the Krasny Oktyabr plant of the enemy. By evening, Soviet troops had completed the first stage's mission. The 44th Guards Rifle Regiment of the 15th Guards Rifle Division attacked enemy positions near the Chervlenaya River. 3 camouflaged German defensive fortifications impeded their advance toward the village of Stary Rogachik, from which the Nazis fired accurately. A machine gunner, Junior Sergeant Nikolai Sergikov, a Stalingrad Komsomol member and mechanic at the Barricady plant, crawled towards the enemy. Near the village of Stary Rogachik, he covered the embrasure of an enemy bunker with his body and ensured the success of the attack of the advancing company. Stalingrader Nikolai Sergikov was posthumously awarded the title Hero of the Soviet Union. On January 14, 1943, troops of the 64th and 57th Armies liberated the eastern bank of the Chervlenaya River, the Karpovskaya railway station, the siding in Sargino, Dmitrievka, Atamanskaya, and Karpovka. On the night of January 15, Soviet troops captured the Potomnik airfield. Units of the 65th and 24th Armies met there in the morning. The German writer Wiener wrote in his Stalingrad diary on January 14 while in Karpovka, "The Soviet offensive is rapidly developing. The western part of the cauldron is already cut off by a giant wedge that stretches from the northern side of the Rososhka River valley down to Karpovka. Dmitrievka and Atamanskaya have been taken by assault by Soviet troops. And already on January 14, a new decree was issued on the construction of the Tundutovo-Prudboy Railway.